Okay, good morning, everybody. I'm super stoked and super excited of today's conversation. Welcome to the Leadership Huddle. And I want to just go ahead and create the context for this conversation. And I think you want to stick around for this one. I think it's going to touch you at the very fiber of your being, given that this is the week of love, and this is the week, not the week, the month of love, and the month of relationships. And if there is anything in anyone's life that matters the most, is your relationships. There's nothing that impacts your life the most. It's not your job, right? It's not your money. It's not really your accomplishments. It's the quality of your relationships. So today's conversation is going to be on the biggest lie in leadership is that relationships stay at home. How you love is how you lead. Now, let me pause for a second. We were taught something very early in our professional lives. Be professional. Don't bring emotions at work. Leave your personal life at home. And yet, you as a leader is asked to inspire trust. Yet, we ask people, leaders, to hold tension, to navigate conflict, to create commitment. But we never teach, and we were never taught on how to relate with another human being. Can you see this? This is kind of a difficult space for people to grow into their leadership. Don't bring your emotions, separate home and work, two different things. But you've got to create trust to make sure you got to navigate conflict and create commitment in others. What if leadership doesn't begin at work, but is revealed at work? So today is not about romance, and I love romance. I'm a Hispanic guy, sorry. I love romance. I thrive in poetry and romantic songs and wine, and this is my thing. But today's not about that, and it's also not about being emotional. It can include that, but it's not about that. It's about relationship as a leadership practice. That's what today is about. Sorel, good morning.
Oh, Gio, good morning. Thank you so much for creating this. And it's as if we grow up, I grow up being nurtured by my mother. I grow up being nurtured by my family. And then the minute I step and work, they say, "Oh man, that lovey-dovey stuff, that mushy stuff, keep it at home. This is a workplace. You can't relate to your coworkers as if they're your friends. If you're going to be effective in life, you've got to separate work from home." And Gio, I think we inherit that in such a way that for a long time I related to that as if that were the truth. Like, to be successful in my profession, to be successful entrepreneur, successful as a business owner, I can't bring love to the party. And yet, as you were pointing to, I've got to relate to people, because to be at work is to be with people. And to get anything done at work is to be getting it done in conversations and in relationships. So some things come into my brain and the brain of most people that leave us relating to love as something it's not. Have you ever heard the term unconditional love, Gio?
Yes.
You know, I'm discovering something about unconditional love. And it goes this way. I grew up hearing and being completely enamored with the phrase unconditional love. It sounds beautiful. It sounds noble. It even has a spiritual tone to it. But here's the deal. I dream of unconditional love. but I only want it to be unconditional for me. Like, hey, Jill, love me just the way I am, man. Don't talk about my bald head. Don't talk about my flaws. Don't talk about any of that. Unconditional love for me is a great thing. But you know what? On the other side, you better shape up before I love you unconditionally.
Yeah,
So,
go
for
ahead.
human beings, this is this myth of unconditional love that we dream of it, but relationships are not dreams. Our relationship is something we live, something we embody, something we experience on a daily basis, right? So, what has the idea of unconditional love cost me? Where I hold it that you have to love me unconditionally. And yet I also hold it that you have to meet all my conditions before I can love you.
Yeah.
And this thing about not taking my love, my relationship to work is anchored in that myth that love is something that's unconditional.
Yeah, and certainly you cannot bring that at work. You
Are you
cannot
kidding
bring
me?
that in your leadership, right? That's what we have sort of been conditioned to separate. And so today we certainly want to open up this Pandora's box. So we want to step outside the box and see that there is not such thing as separating your DNA as a human being, which is to love and be loved. You can't separate that at work. Now, it has boundaries. But here's what I hear you're saying, Sorel, that it's critical for us to take a look into this, which is that unconditional love may be a spiritual aspiration or a romantic notion. But here's the key thing that you're pointing to. Relationships are human agreements. And that is at home, that is true at home, and that is true at work.
And Jill,
Relationships are human agreements. Relationships are not strengthened, and people can really get this. I know anyone who's listening, they can really get it for themselves. Your relationship at home, right? With the one you love or loved, or you're currently tolerating. It doesn't matter where your space is right now. Your relationships at home are strengthened not by the emotions, but by the quality of the agreements. Relationships are strengthened in the agreements. But that's true at home and that's true at work. So, in today's episode, what I really, really like is that what if leadership doesn't begin at work? It is revealed at work. What if relationship is a leadership practice at home and at work? We need to uh, dismantle, if you will, a little bit of some of the things that you're pointing to, Sorel. This whole
yeah.
aspect of unconditional love.
Yeah. And, as you're speaking, Jill, I'm discovering and seeing that you pointed to it. You said, love is relationships are human agreements. So, what if there's no such thing as unconditional love? What if that which we call love, that many times comes attached with emotions and feelings, isn't, I'm thinking about this thing where for me to love, the emotion and the feelings have to be there first. And I'm inviting myself and inviting each of us to look, what if the agreements that make up our relationships, that keep our relationships working, are at the source and at the core of the deepest and strongest emotions we'll ever feel when we're in love? What if it is that way?
Say that again, Sorel.
You know, I want unconditional love, and yet I'm unwilling to give it. So you could say there's no such thing as unconditional love. For a human being, unconditional love is good for me. but really bad when I'm loving you because I don't want to put up with you. And so unconditional love puts me in the space where if you love me, you shouldn't question me. That's the way I receive it. If you love me, you shouldn't set limits or boundaries for me. If you love me, you should stay no matter what, endure me, tolerate me, be with my stuff. That's love. But that's the kind of love that leaves us resentful, tired, and wanting to leave and stay anyway. That's not the life that this is pointing to. This is pointing to the kind of, I'll just call it adult loving, Gio, because when you say unconditional love may be a spiritual aspiration, but relationships are human agreements. You and I can enter into an agreement and create a relationship that works forever to the extent that we keep our agreements to each other. So at work, when people can't bring love at home, I think it's because they're relating to the love they have at home that they would bring to work in the same way that they relate to it on a usual basis. It's the emotion, it's the feeling. And what we're pointing to today is that no, relationships are agreements. And it is when I keep my agreements with you that love, the emotion, and the feeling gets born, gets nurtured, and gets perpetuated in a way that's beautiful.
Yeah, let me tell you what I'm hearing, Sorel, when you said when you were pointing to this aspect about the romantic notion about love, which is if you love me, you should accept everything.
Anything, not
And
everything,
right?
anything.
I mean, you should accept it, right? If you love
Yeah.
me, you're okay with the way I am and the way I'm not. You should be okay with my addictions. You should be okay with my snoring. You should be okay with the way I eat. You should be okay with the way I speak. You should be okay with my past. You should be okay with the way I react to things and I don't react to things. You should be okay with what I like. You should be okay with what I don't like. I mean, if you love me, you should there shouldn't be limits on how I should be because if you love me, you should stay no matter what, right? And I think that in that context, we say to people, don't bring that at work because it's just not going to be tolerated. However you are won't work. There's a set of agreements here, right? And what the inquiry I want to get up on the mat is that notion that if you love me, you should accept everything doesn't work at home either. This is why relationships is a leadership practice. That whole notion that if you love me, you should accept everything, as romantic as that is, it doesn't work at home. And we want to get this really up on the mat and just really think about it, right? Not like right or wrong, just really think about it. If I live my relationship as I should love you because love is unconditional and I should love you no matter what, then that starts becoming an obligation that eventually I start tolerating. And then if I start feeling obligated to be in this relationship and I start tolerating the way this relationship is going, what's likely going to happen?
I'm going to resent every fiber of your being, Jill.
Yeah, what's going to happen is I'm going to start resenting you. I'm going to
Yeah.
start fighting. I'm going to start pretending I'm okay. And at some point, and it happens to all of us, we explode.
Yeah.
Because you can't hold that for that long.
And you're right, it doesn't work at home. And
It
that's
doesn't work at home.
definitely not the kind of love you bring to work.
It doesn't work at home and it doesn't work at work. But at work, we say, don't bring that stuff. What we're trying to say here is don't do that at work, at home either.
Yeah.
It doesn't work in any way. You've got to create, because this is where leadership quietly breaks at home and at work. Because if we can't talk about those agreements that strengthen our relationship, right? If we cannot hold those boundaries in love, in our relationships, we're certainly going to struggle to hold those boundaries at work as well. Avoidance, and this is for all of us, avoidance dressed up as love still creates damage.
Yeah. And what this is creating for me, Gio, is there is the kind of love we need to have both at home and at work. And in this case, if I'm a leader and I'm required to resolve conflicts, I'm required to influence people, I'm being asked to be someone who creates team and commitment. Well, there is a kind of love that works both at home and at work. And boy, you better bring it if you want to lead. And so love, the kind of love we're talking about, it's a possibility, not a contract. It's not something I owe anybody, and it's not something that I'm entitled to receive either. It's a possibility. It's like a space I'm being invited into, and a space I can invite you into, and we can both choose. So what if love is not something I'm entitled to receive, but something I choose to co-create? And now to co-create it, though, I have to step away a moment for myself, Gio, from the sentiment or the feeling of it or the emotion of it, and to begin to create for myself the construct that in the possibility of love, what makes it possible are agreements. So love is really free, but the relationship itself is something we have to design.
I love
And
that. Let me
yeah,
say that love, the sensation, the emotion, whatever you say it is, that connects you with the eternal. Love is free,
it
and
is.
relationships are designed. This is a creation. It is a co-creation between two human beings at work and at home.
Home. And you
Work and at home.
you say
And
design, Gio, and
yeah,
I'm thinking when people hear the word design, they might be thinking there is a certain kind of design that we're talking about. I think the freedom that comes into this construct is that no, you design together the relationship you want. You have the conversations that leave each person clear, whether at work or at home, as to what works in this relationship. The moment you move and go and start interacting with another person, there's the possibility now of yet again designing that relationship. So at the beginning, we pointed to relationship being a leadership practice. I think that's what this is, right? To
yeah.
where I come into a relationship and I know that who I am in this relationship is the one accountable for designing it and how I
I have
design
a we have a client of ours, and very, 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 very successful man, and it's an influence
it. Mhm.
to a country, to a government and a country. It's at the really highest levels of leadership in a particular country. And his relationship at home, it's incredibly damaged. It doesn't work at all. right? And that's true for a lot of us. Relationships at work are working, relationships at home are not working. And so his experience of life is of a deep, deep unfulfillment.
Mm.
Deep, deep, deep unfulfillment, right? And so we start this conversation of boundaries are conditions for relationship, not conditions for love. And we start looking at this whole aspect of co-create relationships as something you co-create. The boundaries are something you co-create. It's not something I set. It's something I co-create with another. And then he
Jill,
started discovering
yeah.
for himself, he started discovering, but she was supposed to love me. Now, this is true of men and women, women and men. No, this was this case in particular. She was supposed to love me. Look how far I've gotten. She was supposed to accept it. She was supposed to support me. She was supposed to do all these things, this aspect of unconditional love. She was supposed to do all of those things, right? And then I said, well, it's not in the agreement. And he says, what agreement? Precisely. There is not in the agreement. You've got to create that in the agreement. So boundaries often are misunderstood as rejections. But in reality, those boundaries, those agreements are what makes trust possible. So here's was the verse opening for breakthrough, Sorrel.
Yeah.
So I asked the man, and for confidentiality, that I won't say his name. So I asked the man, what is a condition at work that creates trust? What is that condition at work that creates trust? And you set that condition up whenever you enter a room, right? And it has worked for you. And he said, to make the story short, he said, well, people must do what they say they're going to do. And if not, they must communicate it. They've got to do that, right? And people must bring solutions to me, not problems. I have too much on my plate, and that must happen. And he said, and I was so thankful he said this, and you must stay at work until the work gets done. At this level of his leadership, the people around him, they have that agreement at work. They have to stay. Otherwise, get
Yeah.
another job. I said, okay, that's our high levels of integrity around work. Then I asked him, would that agreement work at home? And he said, no, it hasn't worked. It doesn't work. It has destroyed our relationship. It has destroyed it. And I said, what's the impact on your life? It's completely unfulfilled. I am questioning my success every day. I'm lonely. Okay, so this is what is in his case. So then I asked him, okay, so you've got to co-create the definition of integrity at work. You got to have a whole new definition of integrity at work, where integrity, and this is where we brought his significant other, we brought his wife to this conversation. Integrity must be flexibility. If there is no flexibility, there is no integrity.
It's jail.
It's jail. But it only makes sense when they both co-created it. It's not one saying it to the other. They had to both co-create that.
Yeah. Jill, thank you for sharing that. The word boundaries sometimes, you know how boundaries are hard. They're like walls, and people relate to them as that, as something I put up in the relationship to protect me. Hey, respect my boundaries, something like that. And what I'm hearing and what you're creating and what you beautifully created for this couple is that boundaries are the requests I make of you. that you get to accept or decline. And in this back and forth, you request, I consider, I request, you consider, we end up creating mutual boundaries. Like we co-created those together from the requests you made, from the requests I made that we agreed to honor. Your client has this request at work. You must do what you say you're going to do. And in a relationship, it might be something as simple. I request you take the garbage out every Sunday night so that I'm not rushing out in the cold, dragging something heavy that I can't pull. And I could accept that request, right? It makes the relationship work. And over time, me continuing to fulfill on that request leaves me feeling as if I'm doing an act of love. And when I do it over and over, it's possible that my partner, my wife, feels as if I'm doing this because I love her. So this agreement thing is beautiful. When we make requests and create and co-create agreements together, it doesn't create boundaries for us. It creates boundaries for the relationship. And so, yeah, boundaries are conditions for relationships, not conditions for love.
Yeah, they're mutual agreements. It's critical of something that you're saying both at work and at home.
Yeah.
Those boundaries, those agreements are not have tos.
Nope.
They're not have tos. No, you don't have to take the garbage out. And if you
Yeah.
do it and it becomes as an expectation, it's still not a have to.
Yeah.
You've got same as work, same as home. Any expectation must be looked as something to appreciate. This
You know,
mutual agreement, it needs to be anchored in appreciation, not in the world of have tos. Someone said, turn your expectations into appreciations and your life will change. And this is critical at home and at work. That's why relationship is a leadership practice. Anywhere where there is an expectation around an agreement must be turned into something you appreciate. At work and at home. And you must be reminded. Because I have to take the garbage out every Monday night, Sorrel. Right? Every single Monday night. But that little short sentence that says, man, I really appreciate you did that, means the world to me. It leaves me enlivened. Same thing at work. Thank you for doing that. Yes, it is in the world of expectation. It is in the world of boundaries, but it must be turned into appreciation every time.
so in
So
the
this is
end,
something to wrap up. And we don't have to wrap up, but this is something to wrap up the inquiry.
yeah,
At work and at home, love, integrity, and responsibility does not require perfection. It requires alignment.
hmm,
It requires alignment. It
something
requires
beautiful happens.
authenticity. Love without responsibility becomes entitlement. Leadership without responsibility becomes authority without trust. Okay, Sorrel, I think that this has so many places to open this
Yeah.
conversation up. And I know time is kind of,
Well, time is on our side, right? Because a conversation like this, leaving it in this space, quote unquote, unresolved, so to speak, is beautiful. Gio, I love you, but that's not a sentiment, right? There's a feeling that comes with it, but now it translates into I know the agreements we've made, and I'm always a promise to honor them. And if I hear you correctly, that's the kind of responsibility that takes entitlement out of the love business, both at work and at home. So the way you ended it, leadership without responsibility becomes authority without trust. You could easily take the word leadership and substitute that with love. Love at home without responsibility becomes entitlement. Like I have to take the garbage out, right? So this is a beautiful place to stop and leave people for Valentine's Day. You know, there's Valentine's Day, and I'm not saying that Valentine's Day celebrates love the emotion or love the feeling, however fleeting it is. And I think the invitation we're extending is that what if this love month, this Valentine's Day, you celebrated the agreements you've made, the mutual agreements that bind your relationship in such a way that love itself is inevitable. All right, Gio.
Thank you, Sorrel. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you for listening in. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being part of the community. I hope this conversation elevated, not elevated, but created a new inquiry, a new question in your life. So for now, have a phenomenal week. Have a phenomenal life and week. And remember, love, eat more plant-based, sleep, smile, walk every day, give, and check your assumptions. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. Bye-bye.
Until next Monday.